Okay. Hi, everybody. Good evening. Get ready for your snowstorm tomorrow. I want to just kind of share a couple of announcements with you before we get started. I do want to ask a favor if it's possible. Starting Point has a new YouTube channel, and all of our podcasts and also my talks are there also. They're also in Vince's Corner. So if you can just kind of go into the Starting Point YouTube and subscribe. So you have to, it doesn't cost anything. And so if we can get 500 people subscribing and tell your friends to do it too, then basically we can then have a clear YouTube name. I don't know, it's crazy how the system works, but if you can get in there yourself, and if you have friends and family and want to just everybody subscribe. What can I tell you? Anyway, I also want to mention that next Thursday at 3:30, Ann Cavalier, our eating disorder therapist, are doing a podcast on eating disorders. Okay. Also, next week we conclude our our grief, loss, and separation series, and I'm going to have Pat Oakes, our grief counselor, on with me. So she's going to be sharing with me next week, and so basically we'll bring our thing to a conclusion by bringing Pat on to become part of it too next week. Okay, just to let you know about that. And then, of course, our Venmo number. We normally pass a basket at the lectures, and now we don't have a basket. We have Venmo. So that information is in the chat room. You can check that out if you want to. Okay, that's all the commercials. The rest of our stuff is on the website. You can check it out. I also want to mention after I finish the grief series, then I'll be starting the series again on codependency because I've gotten a lot of requests for it. So we're going to start that again. Go from there. Okay? All right. I'm going to begin tonight by doing a reading. I picked a reading from the Until Today book, one of my favorite meditation books, and it's from March 19th. I will open my heart and mind to be aware. Without death, there can be no change. Author John Roger wrote, "We are only born once into life. We are reborn many times." He was describing the many, many deaths we experience on our journey through life. We die to old ways of being to be reborn in our power. We die to old beliefs to be reborn to the truth. We die to habits of need, dependency, and control to be reborn in a reliance on spirit. We die to fear of spirit to reborn into the spirit of fearlessness. As long as you are still breathing, death becomes what we commonly call change. Just for today, lay down your notions and fears about death and be willing to change. Today, I'm devoted to accepting that I must accept death in order to change. I wanted to do that reading because it kind of fits right into what we're going to be talking about tonight and sharing tonight, because I really believe very deeply in that word. I will talk about the word death in a couple of minutes. But I want to just for a second, last week we talked about the first three stages of grieving. We talked about denial, anger, and bargaining. And I basically kind of connected them to the first three steps of the program, based on acceptance, based on trust, and based on faith. And so today what I want to do is I want to kind of use that analogy I used back in the beginning about the farmer planting seed. I want to be able to use the last two stages of the grief process, sadness and acceptance. Sadness is a stage of the weeds and thorns, sorting through things in our life. And also acceptance is that process of life that is so spiritual and so beautiful. Now, a lot of this is connected to our Serenity Prayer. If you look at the Serenity Prayer, and you notice at the end it says the wisdom to know the difference. Wisdom is another beautiful word for the gift of acceptance. And so what I want to share with you tonight, which is really important, I want to talk about sadness. And sadness, to me, has another name. Sadness also is this process called death. Now, very many times I've said this, death has a bad name. Because unfortunately, many of us, when we hear the word death, we think of physically dying. But death can be physical, emotional, it can be spiritual. Death is part of the process of life. So death really is an ending so something new can be born. And so in life, very many times throughout our whole entire journey, we go through many endings. We go through many changes. We go through many areas of life that basically allow us to say goodbye so we can say hello. The basic of all this, of course, on the physical level, is the aging process. We all go through the process of aging. We begin with birth. We go through the process of growth. And this process is always changing, but there's also involved in this something called struggle. I use an analogy. I like using it, and mothers in here can relate to it more than I can. But it's the analogy of birth. And I kind of look at it a little different way. We have a little baby in a womb. It's doing its growing, it's developing, and it's in a place that is safe, is comfortable. And then as it grows and gets too big, it has to leave. But in reality, it doesn't really want to leave because it likes it there. I kind of joke about this a little bit, so I'll make the baby Italian. We have this little paisan inside this womb who doesn't want to come out because he likes it there and it's comfortable there. And yet we got this crazy guy called the doctor on the other side saying, push. And you're trying to tell the guy, don't do no pushing. And as a result, the first battle of life takes place. Child has to leave, it doesn't want to leave, so it struggles. So as a mother, you go through struggle, you go through pain, the child goes through it, but eventually the process takes place. The child is born. I mean, try to visualize that little child there saying, you want me to go out there in that dysfunctional world? Something's wrong with you. I got to go out there with all those crazy people. And yet the process takes place, the first struggle. Then when I get out there, I got this doctor who slaps me. I was nice and comfortable. Now I got a guy said push, he got me out of here, and now he slaps me. That starts the journey. And as we go through our different stages of life, from birth through childhood, we go through those stages between 11, maybe and 14. We go through all kinds of changes. Then we go through our war zone, our teenage years. Then we go through young adulthood. Then we go through this. And finally, we come to what they refer to as the golden years or old age. I smile about this a lot because, we all have our own vision of life. When you're 18 years old, you got to remember 30 is old. Then when you're 30, 40 is old. When you're 40, 60 is old. When you're 60, 80 is old. When you're 80, who cares? And then basically, if you make it to 100, you stop doing all that crazy stuff and you're grateful. And so the reality is we go through these stages in life. And most of us go through them kicking and screaming. We go through struggle because it means letting go of things maybe we could do at one time and now we can't do. It means going through a different stage of life. So change is part of the process we have to go through, whether you want to go through it or not. And as a result, then we have to basically try to allow ourselves to go through that grieving process. And there's a sadness to it. So many times in life we look back on the past and there is a little bit of sadness. And sometimes you look back through memories. That's all part of it. Give you an example. One of my staff members made a list of me of all the different names in alphabetical order that are on a memorial wall at Starting Point. And there's close to 800 and some names there. And yesterday I just sat down and went through all those names. And I put marks next to these different names. And I don't know, but just doing that brought up so many memories. I saw the names of guys that are in the original Halfway House way back in Philly. People I've gone through journeys with. One of the first people that helped me and sponsored me way back in the beginning, Norm. And each one of those names had a story, had a meaning. They're all connected. They're all part of the journey I've gone through. So this afternoon, I sat down for about 45 minutes and I decided I'm going to go back over the journey of starting point and the journey of my connection to recovery. And I'm going to list all these names, all these individuals, all these people, and then kind of got my juice of writing again. And then I want to kind of write about them and write about that journey because I really believe memories are so important. Even the negative ones, they're part of our journey, they're part of our growth. And so we all have our history, we all have our story. And so the part of grieving is being able to let go of the past and being able to open up to the new. So there's always that change taking place in all areas of our life. Emotionally, our feeling levels change. We go through different stages. There's an old saying so many times that it's almost like when somebody is born. I always tell the story, and I love one of my favorite stories is of a psychologist named Dan Gottlieb. And Dan had a radio show for years. He was on Sundays and he was on Mondays. And I love Dan. He's a paraplegic. He's a good friend of mine. I knew Dan before he had his accident. But I mean, he's really been a man who went through a lot of struggle. But I always look back and realize some of the beautiful things he shared with me. One of the stories was he shared the story of a young couple that came to see him. They had just had a beautiful little baby girl. They also had a 4-year-old boy. And so the couple said, our 4-year-old came to us and said, is it okay if I go privately and spend time with my little sister? Well, the parents were a little nervous. What's he going to do? Is he going to, get mad at her or yell at her, whatever? So Dan said, let him do it. Keep the door cracked and watch him. That little boy went up to the crib, looked at his baby sister and said, I just want to spend some time with you because I'm starting to forget what it was like to be in touch with the angels. That little child, they tell us very many times, and yeah, as parents, you remember when that little child had imaginary friends? Were they really imaginary? Or were they still connected to the other side? And I truly believe that children go through this process where they have to let go even of that. So they move into the struggles of life and go through the journey of life. I look back at my grandkids and how many times with their imaginary friends. I think of my granddaughter, I took her to see Dragon Tales. Remember Dragon Tales? I took her to see that. And I was getting out of the car and she said, wait, Papa, don't close the car door because my 3 friends have to come with us. I looked in the back seat, there was nobody there. I said, okay, come on. So I let them get out. So we're walking up there. See, I had to hold hands with them. I don't know who's, okay, so we had fun. We got to sit down and she was upset at me because I didn't buy seats for them. I said, that's okay, they can sit on my lap. The seats were expensive. And then, of course, when the balloon man came, I said, 1 balloon for everybody. But the bottom line was, I still remember that. I remember her connection to her imaginary friends. Were they really imaginary? Or was she still in touch with? But then we have to go through the transition. We got to go through the change. There's a sadness in that. There's a sadness in growth. Because sadness is a powerful, powerful process that all of us go through in life as we go through changes. I experienced that in my own way. I was talking to my wife about this last night. There's a sadness even as I watch Starting Point go through its changes, go through its transition. And yet it's got to go through that. It's got to keep changing. We come to a new world today, a new direction today. Would I like to go back to the halfway house and the soup kitchen? Sometimes. Sometimes it seems kind of real interesting to go back there. But you got to remember, I ran a soup kitchen and ran a halfway house with all kinds of unbelievable people. But you got to remember, I was what? 30, 31 years old. I had a different set of energy in my life. Don't know whether I could do that today, but who knows? But I realize over and over again, it's all part of a process. And so sadness is a beautiful thing we go through. Even spiritually, go through changes. Our spirit changes. Our connection to different belief systems goes through changes. We go in different directions in the course of our life. That's all part of the grieving process we go through. Even people we have lost, people that have died, especially those who have died quickly or have died suddenly, especially those parents who have lost children. Very many times there's a powerful grief to that. And it's hard to say goodbye. It's hard to do closure. It's hard to move on. Sometimes it takes a long period of time for healing to take place. The ending of relationships. I can go through 10 different areas, changes in jobs. It's all part of the grieving process we go through. But you got to try to understand, which is so important, that we're going to go through this sadness. I look at sadness in the following way. Sadness is a form of death. It's a form of change that leads to new growth. And that's where that planting of the seed in that good soil comes into play because it needs to be able to be nurtured and nourished, and change is part of that journey. If you connect this to the 12 steps, the sadness section of grieving are steps 4 through 9, the working steps, as I call them. Doing an inventory, going back through your history, taking a look at your life, being able to share it, being able to learn from it, to grow from it. So to look at the negative, but form the positive from it. Because everything in life has both sides to it. To be able to go through our defects of character, to find out that we're human, to acknowledge things in our life, to be in touch with them. It's all part of sorting out the weeds, sorting things out. You know, to be able to make amends, to make peace, to make settlement, to be able to move on. You know, it's hard sometimes when you make changes and major changes in your life because not everybody's going to accept them. But you have to be able to come to an acceptance of them inside of yourself. And that takes time. It's almost like when somebody dies, we go through a funeral. A funeral is a form of closure, even though we still need a lot longer process of grieving, but it's a beginning. You know, a starting point out in our garden area, we have a place called the Recovery Cemetery. It's a plot of ground. And a lot of times when people are doing closure things with different parts of their life and their journey, we have them write letters, we have them do closure, we have them work through this process, and then we take them out back and we actually dig a grave. We put their letters and stuff they're letting go of and saying goodbye to and doing their closure, and we burn them. Then we bury the ashes. We do a funeral service and say goodbye to them. It's all part of the journey of letting go. I know it's something I had to do when I left the priesthood, even though I can relate very much to that little child in the womb, because when I was in the priesthood and the seminary, and I was in my own womb. I was in a safe place, even though I wasn't happy, even though it really wasn't the place I wanted to be. But I was scared to change. I was scared to watch this portion of my life come to an end, so a new portion can be born. And yet, that change was scary. It wasn't the easiest thing in the world. That's why I said back in the beginning in the grieving process, sometimes it's really hard to do this by yourself. You need help, you need guidance, you need support, you need people to help you through it. Because that process of saying goodbye is not always easy. And yet it's important because doing closure, being able to close something out, allows us to be open to something new. So it's a process we have to go through. And so we learn after a period of time that everything in life goes through those periods of change, that process of change. And so we're constantly experiencing a little bit of death all the time. It's a process. And so I think even when it comes to relationships, I hear this from people a lot of times. You know, I'm not happy. Things aren't working, but I can't leave because I till death do me part. Well, if something's died emotionally, it's died spiritually, 2/3 of it is gone. Please don't commit murder. It's easier to do a closure and move on, which is really important in the process with it. Because basically we have to learn that sometimes change is there, change is something we have to do. Is it scary? Yes. Does it hurt a little bit? Yes. It's like that birth process all over again. It's the process of beginning, the process of ending. And so I really believe that even when we come to the end of our journey physically on this earth, it's almost like sometimes we can actually be connected to the other side. The Indians said that all the time. The ancient Indians, the elders, they used to know when it was time to leave. They would go through their goodbye. They would say so long. We talked a little bit about that last week. And so as part of the process. So sadness leads us to acceptance. Now, I got to be honest with you. Acceptance is something very difficult to explain. It's very difficult to put into words. I'm going to try, but it's something you have to feel. You have to come to. I guess the easiest way I can kind of share this with you is by connecting it to the Serenity Prayer. It's almost like that Serenity Prayer is so simple and so beautiful, and yet contains all the messages of the grieving process. The beautiful part about it was, God, please grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. It's about powerlessness. It's about realizing the fact that you're not in charge of changing anything else. Courage to change the things I can. I can work on the changes inside of me. And too many times we have a tendency to want them to come from the outside. Change doesn't come from the outside, it comes from the inside. The world we live in a lot of times is going through a lot of changes. The most changes in history, they tell us, if you study history, takes about 100 years. I don't have to wait around for all of that. And so I've got to make the changes inside of me. And if change occurs within me, with my spirit, I get in touch with my spirit. It goes back to what I talked about last week in the battle between the ego and the spirit, the struggle that we go through in life. I have to be able to move towards that process. And the steps will help us do that. The last 3 steps of the program are about the acceptance process, because we talk about filling your soul, prayer, meditation, about basically doing a little inventory of life. We talk about sharing the gifts we have inside of ourselves. It's about growth. It's about sharing. The old process is, if you don't give away the things that are part of you, then you won't get anything back. So it's a give and a take. It's a back and forth. It's called life. And believe it or not, even though it's a struggle, even though we got to go through pain, we got to go through different stages in our life, it's all part of it. And our body tells us this all the time, the things we go through. You know, I used to be able to stay up till 10, 11 o'clock at night. Now we get around 8 or 8:30. Bye. You know, it's enough. You know, and so it's all part of the journey, you know. And once in a while, I might stay up really late till 9:30. So it's totally amazing. That's when I'm a dirty stay out. What can I tell you? But the bottom line is, you have to kind of laugh at the journey of life. You have to learn that really it's okay for those changes to occur in the course of your journey. Your energy levels change. Things you used to be able to do, you can't do. So it's all part of it. It's all part of the journey we go through. When it comes to acceptance, I always talk about what I call the 4 spiritual words. The very special, beautiful words that to me lead to acceptance. The first one is my favorite spiritual word. You've heard me use it before, and I'll probably use it, for most of my life. It's the word fertilizer. I'm a big advocate of fertilizer. Because where does fertilizer come from? It comes from crap, right? I'm being nice tonight. I'm using the right words. It comes from crap. Now, what do? Is you process it. It becomes something healthy and beautiful to help things to grow. So what is our 4th and 5th step all about? It's about fertilizer. It's about being able to process our garbage and allow it to become something beautiful so we can grow from it. And so really everything in life has a purpose. Every experience we go through brings us to a greater sense of that last part of the Serenity Prayer, the wisdom to know the difference, the wisdom to live, the gift of wisdom, the gift of experience, the gift of learning. And fertilizer is a beautiful thing because I'm allowing myself to look at my history, to look even the negative parts of my life and realize they're all teachable moments. It's me going through a change process in my life. The second word is really two words, but I put them together. The words are supposed to. I consider those two words so beautiful and powerful. Why do things that you experience in life happen? Because they were supposed to. I know a lot of us can go back on that and say, I really wish that didn't happen, but it happened because it was supposed to. And as we go through the grieving process, we can learn from it, we can grow from it, become stronger from it. From our experience comes our strength and comes our hope. It's all part of the process we go through in life. And I realize over and over again how important that is. And yet, supposed to is something we have a hard time with sometimes. Because so many times I want things not to be, even though they are the way they are. There's sadness involved in that. There's grieving involved in that. Saying goodbye, there's grieving in it. So it's all part of the process we're going through in life. I also realize over and over again that third spiritual word is called gratitude, to be grateful. Do you ever think in your life you look back on things that happened to you, even painful things, and maybe eventually try to face them through an attitude of gratitude, an attitude of humility, an attitude of learning? Gratitude is such a powerful word, such a powerful spiritual word. But to come to acceptance, we also have to come to gratitude. We have to come to that gift of acceptance so we can grow. And that's that fourth spiritual word, the ultimate spiritual word, acceptance. Acceptance. And I'm able to accept the reality of my life. Now, again, I'm saying this in words tonight, but this is something that just doesn't happen magically. It's something that takes time. It's something that happens over a period of time. Growth is something that we're constantly involved in. And therefore, even when we go through losses, and we go through people that we've lost in our life, looking back, even on my parents and my family, I use the example. I organized a cousin's reunion. And, years ago when we started it, we had, I don't know, 11, 12 cousins. We had a nice little group. We used to get together and share. I think now if we didn't have it this year because of the pandemic, but basically we're probably down now to 3 or 4. Things are changing. Life changes. I even found out, I didn't realize it, but now I do, that I'm the patriarch of the family. I remember my cousin Frankie saying to me when I was visiting him, he says, Vince, you're next when I leave. You're the patriarch. I says, no, that's your job. Well, he died this past year, and guess what? I got the job whether I wanted it or not. So I'm now the patriarch, and it's all part of the journey. Even when in recovery, a lot of times, I always quote the elders and people that have come before me and the old timers. And somebody reminded me the other day, I'm now an old timer. Wow, where'd that come from? But see, it's almost like how'd I get there? But it's all part of the journey. So I realized the fact that, I can grieve things of the past. I can realize they're part of my journey. But grieving is such a spiritual process we all go through because we all go through loss, we go through endings, and we go through new beginnings. And so I look at the grief process as a very special process of life. And it really teaches us the beauty of life and how to be able to enjoy every moment. If you look at the rest of the Serenity Prayer, if you look at the complete version, which I posted on Facebook this morning, they emphasize living one day at a time, doing things, in this world the best we possibly can, living life in a very simple and beautiful way. And I really love the entire Serenity Prayer because it reminds me of the concept that you have to learn to the best of our ability to cherish the people that are around you, to be grateful for the little things in life. Even as parents, you have to realize the fact, grief, your children are going to grow up. I mean, I know I kept trying to put bricks on the heads of my grandkids, but they still kept growing. And you may not always agree with some of the stuff that they're doing, that they might be doing, and you wish it was different. But guess what? They're on their journey. And one day they'll go to therapy and talk about us. Isn't that wonderful? It's fantastic, you know? And they'll basically go through their own process and their own growth thing. God, that's, to me, that is the ultimate adventure of life. That is really what it's really all about. It's all about that constant growth process that's taking place. And so we got to learn how to say goodbye. Even though it's painful sometimes, we realize this is what the journey is really all about. And this is the same thing as regards our physical self, our physical body. It's about our spiritual and emotional self. Every aspect, even our social self changes like crazy. I mean, God, look at the world we live in today with the pandemic, with all the changes that have occurred. I know many of us are getting a little stir crazy right now. But the bottom line is we've had to go through that process called adjustment. And guess what? I even hate to tell you this, so please don't hit me. It's not going to go back to just the way it was before. We're going to transition into a new way of life, a new direction of life, because that's how life is. We don't go back, we go forward. And so I have no idea where it's going to go, nor am I going to try to figure it out. I'm going to go back to that serenity prayer and live one day at a time, live in the present, celebrate and honor the people I am connected to, celebrate my family, celebrate the people I love, celebrate my recovery family, and celebrate the people I meet in the course of my journey. Even though there may be some people you're going to meet you may not want to celebrate, but maybe they've come into your life to be a teacher too. I don't know. Sometimes I got to say goodbye to people, even while they're still alive, because they might be unhealthy for me, and that's okay too. And so I have to realize that we're on this journey, we're on it together, we're on this world together. And no matter where we go on the journey, no matter what happens, hopefully we'll be open to learn and open to grow. And so allow the grieving process to take place, allow the beauty of this process to take place. And so when we talk about grieving, we're talking about what I refer to as the ultimate process of life. We're always in the process of grieving constantly in our life. It just means change. It's part of the process we go through in life. So we're going to deny it. We're going to fight it. We're going to battle it. We're going to get upset sometimes and go through changes. We're going to try to figure it out until you figure you can't figure it out. If you ever figure life out, please let me know. Call me, because I want to take you on tour. No. We just live life to the best of our ability, and we're going to have ups, we're going to have downs, we're going to have curves, all kinds of things are going to happen. It's all part of our journey. You're going to be healthy at one point. You may get sicknesses at other points. Your body is your body. Your emotional self is going to go through changes. Your spiritual self will go through changes. Just try to the best of our ability to be open to it, to go with the flow, to go with the process. And we pray and hope that we can come to acceptance and come to peace. And from our experience and our wisdom, we'll know what we can do, what we can't do. So as you say that serenity prayer, remember the powerful words in that prayer. Courage to change the things I can. I can work on things in my own life and make changes. And have the wisdom, the common sense, to have the experience, to grow and learn, and then to be able to share it and connect it with others. And sometimes you'll plant a seed like that good ground. I never realized it. My father planted seeds in me, and I love my dad. I miss him tremendously, but I know he's here. He planted seeds in me that didn't really pop out of the ground until later on in my life. I can remember my dad, little things he would say. Everything takes time, patience, my son. His famous words were, Pacienza, Wayon. Pacienza, Wayon. Patience, little boy. Everything will happen. Just be patient. Work through it. And always remember the things he said to me over and over again. He planted seeds. What do we do in our children? What do we do in the people we meet? Like the farmer, we plant some seeds. And in time, they'll find their place. They'll find their growth. And sometimes some of them will make it and some won't. It's all part of the journey. It's part of life. And so that 12th step is a seed planting step, where I share the gifts I have with others, and hopefully they'll be able to touch and reach somebody else in the course of our journey. And so I want to kind of finish this series next week by inviting Pat to come over with me. Pat is a fantastic grief counselor. She does a lot of grief work. She especially works with parents who have lost children. That's her specialty. And so it'll be a treat to have her here with us next week. But I want to kind of finish tonight by offering a prayer of gratitude, a prayer of acceptance, a prayer to help us get through this process. So let us pray. God, we come before you as a family. We ask for your guidance. We ask for your direction. We ask you to allow us to look back on the people that have been part of our journey, all the experiences we've gone through in life, knowing that if we have faith and we have trust in you, you are our guide, you are our strength, that you are always there to help us through the journey. Give us the sense of humility to ask for help and ask for guidance, ask for direction. Teach us not to walk the journey of life alone. Teach us how much we do need one another. We're a part of one another. Help us to learn from all of our experiences, from all the things we have gone through, knowing that hopefully we'll be able to learn from what we experience in the course of our journey and realize that maybe we can help someone else by carrying a message of hope, a message of love, a message of peace. We pray for acceptance, that we can accept where we are on our own journey, we can accept others on their journey, and pray that they may be able to walk the journey along with you also. So we ask for this blessing, and we ask for this guidance, and we ask for this direction, and we thank you for all those who have gone before us, and especially, Lord, we thank you for all those that are on our memorial wall at Starting Point. We never want to forget them, for they are also part of our family. And for all those who have moved on to a new journey, we thank you for the lessons they've taught us. We thank you for who they are. We pray this and we ask this in your name, and we ask this in the Lord's name. Amen. And I'm going to ask if you don't mind unmuting, and we can say the we version of the Serenity Prayer together.
God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. God's will, not mine, be done.